going back to about 86, I guess. We've made an awful lot of Cardinal wings using different methods, lost foam method, rod method, block method, just building them up in midair, but we're going to try to make a wing jig. We have an idea we want to try, and if it works well, obviously it'll be a jig that anybody would like to borrow it or come over to the shop could put their wing together in a relatively quick and accurate manner. Now this is Mike Kajeski, famous for making the wing on the rod method. What we did, we went down to the Home Depot. What were these, $8 a slice?
Yeah.
These are 3/4-inch particle board with a Formica on both sides. One end raw, of course, because we've already cut it. What did we cut it to, 65 inches?
64, I think it is.
64. Mike ripped it down with a nice sharp blade. We epoxied all three of them together and put them in compression, so it's, right now, I think that's about as straight as any building table, and we're going to try to do it without even having a piece of glass on it. But what we want to do, the first thing is we want to dress off all these edges, except for the Formica edge, which we're going to use to run our triangle on. So let's take, you got the belt sander outside? Let's take it outside. Just save the dust inside the house here. Get those edges dressed right off. We're at the time of the year where the fish are in hibernation. I think we're going to be in hibernation soon. That working good, Mike? Good. You can see the wind is blowing the dust right away. We want to get, I want to break all the edges too if we can. The purpose of this is we want to seal the edges. We're going to use Brodak clear dope. Seal the edges so it's less prone to pick up moisture and warp over the years. I also thought at one time if this does tend to warp out, and I don't think it will, I'll get it straight again. Either add another laminate. What were these, $8 a piece for the shelf? I think it's shelving. Very cheap. This whole thing is under $25 by the time you get out of the store and you have a 30-inch piece left over. We made it just a little bit oversized. Wait, and I'll give you a hand holding that. I want to get the edges too. But that's the whole thing. Get that whole edge so you can seal it. All right, just dress off the edge there. You got it. Now get that side there. All right, now I'm going to go down and get some Brodak dope and seal this edge before we even bring it down to the house. We dressed off all the corners. The purpose of this is you don't want to be walking by this and catching it. All these corners are dressed.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that's good. I'll get a little sanding block. We'll even hit that by hand.
Yeah.
You can see what a lovely, the wind is blowing the dust right away here. A couple of reasons for using Brodak dope. It dries real quick, it's got a good high solid content, and it really, really penetrates well. I put a little of Brodak retarder in here too, just to get this to really penetrate well. The purpose of sealing this is, of course, we're in a damp cellar. We don't want to have the moisture be a problem that over the years it either twists or bows or something. Now, keep in mind, there's a lot of good ways to build a wing. The lost foam method is one of the best. The rod method, one of the best. Building on little blocks. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We're trying to come up with an alternative so that basically people like Mike has built, how many Cardinal wings already? Two. This will be his third Cardinal wing. We can do them in roughly, we're looking to get them from 4 hours down to 2 hours if we possibly can. When everything is right with the laser cut parts. I don't think it's unrealistic to have maybe 2 to 3 hour and pull a wing out of the jig in one piece. And we have all the wood cut, so this should go pretty quickly today. And we're certainly not losing a flying day. You go flying your plane today. What awful weather we're having here. See how nice that penetrates into the end grain. You would not want to leave the end grain open. We also wanted to make sure when we're all done we'll hit these edges again with sandpaper a little bit, just to get so we don't have an edge here that catches things. You could soak that stuff right in, and that dries up. We'll leave it out here 5-10 minutes. It'll be dry as a bone. Now while Mike is out there putting the last coats of Brodak dope on there, what we did is we took some ordinary 1.5-inch wood, ran a saw blade through it. Mike picked these up at the lumber yard. The guy did it at the lumber yard for him. Actually for what amounted to be a cup of coffee. So, but if you didn't, if you had a table saw with a rip fence, you could do this. And what we want to do is trim these off into blocks. We're going to make enough to make 2 or 3 wing jigs. Maybe Mike will even go into business making these wing jigs. The problem is, how could you ship them? Might be easier just to build a wing for the guy, I don't know. But anyway, just remember, Mike makes those great stooges, of which he's sold quite a bit of them already. And we'll be, hopefully, be making another production run of them soon in the shop. When you get to a piece of the wood like this, you want to just forget about that, and we'll just trim through that block. But we basically want to make a bunch of little blocks with a slot in them. Now, of course, if you happen to have $1 million table saw. 1 second. And we want to make enough up for 3 or 4 of these jigs, so when Mike starts selling them, we don't have to reset up on this. Of course, when we're done, you'll be able to use the same jig to build almost any wing. You won't need to cut rod holes. The only cut's got to be accurate is the bottom one, the one directly opposite the knot. Now, obviously, we're going to throw any parts, the knots away, but we just want to cut right through the whole deal here and make a lot extra. Okay, so we got the blocks roughed out. Now we want to put a nice finish on them. This is drying up in the sun. Let's take each one, let's go through the blocks and pick out the 60 best ones. Some have knots, some have little things. We'll go downstairs, sort them out, and we'll come out here and dress them off with the belt sander. Now we need 60 good ones. We really need 56, but what we found is the little nail file, as long as we don't split them, we just want to get off the rough edges. You need a thin nail file, or just fold back a piece of sandpaper.
This one's too thick.
Okay, if we have to, we can use the belt sander. Now, we predicated this on using laser cut Cardinal ribs, but obviously, if you were going to use 16th ribs, you could get a thin blade, like the blade with the little teeth for cutting paneling. The idea is they'll drop right in here, and this top edge will be our reference line. These are all real accurate, all exactly the same.
Yeah, we need something thinner to get in there.
Okay. One thing, I always save all my old shop sanding belts, because you always get jobs like this where an old worn-out sanding belt is perfect. Let's see, Ned. The file is just a little bit too thick. Try that folded-up sanding belt. See if that's a little bit better. The idea is we don't want to have any rough...
That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
That'll do it. Okay, and just dress off all of these.
That's what.
And we're ready to start laying it out. That thing's probably dry outside. The Brodak... Okay, what we're trying to do is dress off all the edges, of course. Just make them as edge-free as possible. Part of the job we want to take a little extra time on, just to make it as workmanlike as possible, since we intend to use this jig over and over. There's so many people locally in the club and well, everywhere, building the wings, or wings that are very similar. We could use the same jig to build an SV11, to build an Impact, Cardinal, whatever, probably even a Nobler. We're going to try to make it as universal as possible, so we can build different planes without having to make a new jig. Even a Brodak Nobler. Okay, the next step is we're taking each block and just randomly drilling 2 holes with a drill a little bit larger than the pins that we intend to use, the big T-pins. Just drilled right through. You can save some time while Mike's working over on a belt sander. I can be over here on a drill press, and I'll drill the rest of these out off camera, and we'll be ready to start laying this up. Clean the edges up nice. We're putting a nice corner on everything. Nice and smooth, because we're going to use that for our tri-square to lay out the lines here. Just cutting up some, just what amounts to be scrap 1/4-inch squares to make a little dead stop for while we're working on a table. It isn't wandering and walking all over the place, because again, right at this point, it's still slippery, and we haven't really decided exactly what we want to use as a gripping surface on the bottom. Some kind of cork, foam rubber, we haven't made that decision yet. But this will get us through today. And we're just going to glue these around the perimeter so it just doesn't walk around the table. You know, we originally thought we were going to put little rubber feet all over the bottom, or a piece of flat, soft rubber. And I had thought of that as a gripping. This is the kind of material. But I couldn't find any in inventory here, and until we decide on that, we're just putting these little pieces of end grain, C8 them right in, randomly. Use some Brodax C8, yeah, and that always comes out all over your finger. Put them on both sides. It's not going to slide side to side, but that'll just give us a nice hard working surface while we're working on this. We'll put them on both sides. And using them in end grain, of course, is the most realistic here. Now we're just using the Cardinal plans as an example, since almost every plane that uses a D-tube or a C-tube wing, the ribs are roughly 2 inches apart. We're going to use this now. There's 2 inches, not counting the space of the rib itself, the 3/32 thickness. We also are going to lay out the fuselage, so the 2 middle ribs, so that the rib sits right under the fuselage. We don't want to have the fuselage side here and the rib here. It would be a lot stronger if the fuselage side and that first rib line up, and then from that point on we're going to make a little fixture to lay out the ribs so they're as accurate as possible. Now when Steve Busso drew these plans, believe me, he did an accurate job. This is one of the best sets of plans. Okay, Mike's going to mark the center of the board as the first step. Can just use the 90-degree triangle and give me a center line to work with.
Okay, 31 7/8.
Now you know that line is going to reference off the center line of our wing. Now we want to find out the spacing for the first rib out. This first rib is the only one we're going to lay out. It's 1 1/4 inches, 1 1/4 inches. So you want to go 1 1/4 inches out in each dimension, get another line on there. And then from that point on we could lay out the ribs. Now you have the 2 lines. Now we're referencing off the side of the fixture that has the Formica coating, so it's nice and straight, nice and even, easy to work with. We've referenced off the 2 center. It's always the 2 center ribs that you want to space exactly under the fuselage side. Now we want to set up a jig. We're going to make a jig to line up the next lines. They're going to be 2 and 3/32 apart to account for the thickness of the ribs. Okay, we're making up, this dimension is 2 and 3/32 between. See, what we're trying to do, and in this case, this is going to be a universal wing jig, but we're referencing off the inboard Cardinal wing. Now, normally, the outboard wing is a little bit shorter. I think it's a 1/2 or 3/4 of an inch shorter. But I want an equal panel jig, because I want to make this an equal panel plane. That's my goal here, is to get everyone exactly the same. So I'm making up a strip that I can reference off so that all the lines will be exactly 2 and 3/32. In other words, I'll have a mirror image of the inner wing on the outer wing. So in essence, I can take the wing, turn it over, it'll be exactly the same on both sides. Okay, you got that laid out? It's the same on both ends. Let's just saw it up.
Okay.
Now Mike's cutting it a little bit on the plus side, and then we're going to trim it with the belt sander, get it right to the thickness of the line. Now Mike left the line on. We're going to just take it down to the line little by little by little with the belt sander, so it's real accurate. I mean, you can get carried away with wings, laying things out with wings that they're in 10,000ths and 5,000ths. The wing doesn't have to be accurate in thousandths. It needs to be accurate in maybe in 30 seconds would be realistic. You just take off enough that that's going to be our spacer. Okay, now a good double check is always just go right off each rib, since we're trying to replicate the larger inboard wing twice, that we haven't confused ourselves here. Okay, now we can just go right up to the jig using a 90-degree triangle to reference that. Use the reference on one side, use that on the other side. I'll hold my hand, get a nice accurate line. Okay, Mike's got all the center lines laid out. Now what we have to do, those you can plot because we know the trailing edge thickness, but the leading edge we got to measure where the sheeting ends and take into account this little rib. We can't have the block. You know what I'm saying, Mike?
Yep.
This block on R4 can't be further forward than that. And then when you flip it over and you have one side sheeted, obviously you have to take the center blocks out. That's why you tack glue them in with nice CA. These really aren't permanently installed. Little soldiers. Okay, what we could do is reference off at a plan. This is, I think, 3/4 of an inch. Come forward an inch, that'll be fine.
Alright, well, we can adjust it later, right?
Now we carefully laid this out so we know each rib. And we know how far forward the sheeting comes, and we're assuming when we flip over we're going to pull out the middle blocks and just put some kind of a block with a reverse kerf in there. But right now we know where the trailing edge will end, so each block Mike can lay each one out, and I'd leave a 64th there, Mike.
All right.
And just look down from the top, make sure you get them centered, and just tack glue them in. Okay, we know the reference. We're going to leave the trailing edge amount. It's only the center ones that we really have we haven't really made a final decision on yet. But we can go right down for each rib station.
If there's any glare on my bald head, I could put a hat on.
I was thinking of just painting it black with that shoe polish, that spray shoe polish.
I'm gonna get a tattoo of an eyeball.
A guy that works with Karen bought that spray on. It's like spray velour. Oh, did it look bad? And he's a short guy, so everybody, you know, if you're a tall guy, if you're Michael Jordan, you can get away with putting that stuff on. Okay, you just want to line each one up, and we have the line in the front for lining the front ones up. And it's only that one that's going to be a little bit of, it's going to be 5.5 instead of 6. Now, one of the things that I thought would be real cute, and we did not get to do it, because remember, what we're trying to do is keep the cost and the expense of the jig to a minimum. If you want to spend $5,000, you can get a surface plate. What I thought we could do is at one time is cut the wing plan itself out. And the reason we abandoned this, 2 reasons, is I know the plan shows a shorter outboard wing, which I don't want. I would have to cut 2 sets of plans and then reverse one over. And then I was going to take and paint the whole top of the table with an epoxy, put the plans in the epoxy, and put glass on top. And I didn't, by the time I thought about getting a piece of glass, cut for this, and with the edge removed, would be a lot more work. And since this jig is going to be out on loan to people 99% of the time, it's more prone to break the glass. This, I think, is more durable in the long run, especially considering Some of the guys in the club. This is a height gauge that Bob Martens made up. And what we do is we're going to go down to each station of each block. Check it out. You can do a lot of things here. You can do this with a straight edge, with a level. Just go to each one. And you really should go to front and back if you want to be super accurate before we put in the front blocks. Because once these are in, they're in forever. You don't have to go back and do this over and over again.
Nice.
It's looking good?
Everyone.
All right.
I don't know, the guy who cut these must have been pretty good.
I don't think so. I think he was lucky. But it's better to be good than lucky. Just check each one there. That little gauge works so good. Now obviously there's a couple things. You could make this, we were talking about this off camera, you could get a piece of nice furniture, hardwood, and make this real pretty, and there's a lot of things you could do to upgrade this, but then you get the cost gets high. And we're trying to keep the cost of this whole piece somewhere around $25. So that an average guy, just an average guy could spend a Saturday or a Sunday, knock one of these out, and for the rest of his life he'd have a wing jig. No matter what wing he was building, the worst that could happen is you could take the glass slider, knock all the blocks off, and relay out the wing. But in our case, we want to build a lot of Cardinal wings. And people in the club, there's several people already bought Cardinal kits. They're going to be starting them soon. So one by one, we can loan out the jig, or they can just come over here and do it. This is how we get free pizza all winter. Just have to lay out the front blocks, pretty much redundant, repeat. Remember, we got this one here has to go back to give us some room for this sheeting, where this sheeting goes. And Mike came up with a nice little idea. You lay the rib in, line the rib in with the line, use the rib as your alignment tool. See, I wouldn't have thought of that because I'm not a professional contractor.
See that? You can put it right in. Lines right up nice.
By the way, the reason we're doing this is Mike doesn't want to go and work on the roof. It's too windy to work on the roof, and I don't blame you. I think we'll play toy planes today.
Yeah.
All right. This is working out good. That lines it up real nice.
Yep. It don't get no better than this.
And boy, the whole key to making a wing very, very easy is laser cut ribs. These are laser cut ribs. The beautiful part is they fit the plan. Everything is cut for you. They drop right in. This is the whole key to making this work. The old days of cutting ribs out with a with a blade and sanding them to shape, forget it. This is pro stunt stuff. I love it. Okay, just use each one to line it up. That's great. Mike's lining that up. I'm going through some wood here, and you can see obviously this will not be a choice piece, but you want to go through enough pieces that you have a fair chance of getting one that's not going to spring. This one looks like we could use this. We're going to go through our whole wood collection and get some. We're looking for straight, not super light, because you're only going to use about 1/4 inch of this. But the first requirement that it's not going to spring when we cut it. How you doing with those blocks? Oh, he's coming down a home stretch, baby. I trimmed off a piece of this just because it's easier to trim it off now. Mike's transposing the center line right onto the piece of wood, and we'll tack glue that piece of wood right onto the trailing edge when we're done. Come on, everything we're trying to do is working off this height. So that center line, we'll draw that out with a ruler. We'd like to have that you can sight right down at the top of the blocks, and it looks like we've got that pretty well level. And the trailing edge. Okay, we could draw that center line on there now. Okay, now we're using the straight edge to make sure we get the alignment here. Now this is a real key step. And then we're going to just put a couple of drops of thin CA along the edge, but we want to make sure we don't have a bow or that we're creating some kind of odd angle here. So the ruler gives us that straight edge, the jig itself gives us that straight edge, and we already have the center line on here. So once we get to this point, it's really not there should be no curve in that at all. That's really not a problem at all. We're checking as we go down each station with a 90-degree triangle just to make sure we have it in 90-degree reference. Okay, that takes care of that. We know we're in 90-degree. We don't care about the height. This is all getting shaved away. We're 90 degrees in this dimension, 90 degrees down the trailing edge. This is the way the laser cut Cardinal ribs gets manufactured, sold, signed, sealed. Take them out of the pack. Take that tape off. Oh, tell me that doesn't save you some work. Holy mackerel! All right, drop them in, baby.
That's it. We're ready.
This is pretty. We got to just. I'll get some pins out too. We could use a new pack of pins, but I don't think we have one. We're not used to using pins here. Okay, what we're doing, you put a dot halfway down there and use the middle of this. Since these are all laser cut, they're exactly accurate, exactly mirror images. Use a nice straight edge. And for our purposes, we're just, just use a red line. Any kind of line. A thin ballpoint line is the best. Gives you a double and a triple check on your center lines this way. This is really optional, because you could check it as you go with the gauge, but this makes it that you have a redundant. Okay, let's just go right down that set of ribs, put the center lines on, and we're all set. That's not a bad idea too. After you're all done with the center line, put them all back in a stack and number them, or number them ahead of time. And if you drop them on the floor, of course, you can marry them up with the sheet. The main plans have all the ribs in full scale, like any quality ship would. Now, anybody that's watched any of my videos knows that I always show the mistakes, and this was a mistake. What we did, I somehow miscalculated this dimension. And what happens, put the last rib in and just show what happens, what we've run into. But this is the thing now, no matter what you're laying it out for. See how we want to be able to flip the wing over. So obviously we're going to move these blocks back a good 1/4 inch. The last 4 have to get moved back. What I'm doing, I'm just soaking the joint with acetone, hoping we're not going to have to make, even though we made a bunch of extra blocks, because we anticipated making more of these wing jigs. Let it soak with acetone a minute, and then we'll take the glass cutter and just pop it. You know, when somebody's trying to give you honest information and they edit out all the mistakes, especially molding. Molding is the most obvious thing. And then you go to do a part and you think, oh gee, this guy never had a problem, he never made a crooked wing, he never had a motor or a lean run or something. It's not in your best interest. I think it's in the best interest of the person learning to see the mistakes. The people I've learned a lot from, and by the way, Mike is one of them, the people that really have helped me understand how to do things with my hands have showed me the mistakes that I'm liable to make and showed me how to correct them. And I think that's just as important as thinking that you'll never make a mistake. All right, ready to pop that off? There you go. Now, just a couple things. The last little bit, you're better off if you soak that with some acetone, because you don't want to catch and take a chunk out of the Formica. A lot of times that glue, CA is such good glue. I just clean it up and we'll move those 4 back. And nobody will know we made this mistake. I'll edit it out. Now, we were lucky that we cut I don't know, how many extra? We cut 200 extra blocks. Yeah. The reason is when you scrape these off and pop them, if we had a piece of glass, it would be a lot better than Formica, you tend to catch the razor in there. So if you can afford the glass, fine, that's one thing. But if you're going to do it this way, the acetone soaking is a good idea. I'm sure in the real world you could go and buy some Debonder. Heaven forbid we should have to buy some of these products. All right, leave us plenty of room there. There you go. Plenty room. I'll go get the squares ready so we can start packing this together. We'll check every step of the way is this go, no-go gauge. So we can check the center line everywhere on the wing by just laying this and checking our center line. So first thing I would want to just take a look at is that we have each one of these in alignment and put the tiny drop of CA so the center line touches the center line right down the ribs. We'll still be able to move the rib up and down using those eagle eyes. You'll bring your glasses the next time.
I was hoping you didn't say that.
Yeah, don't tell anybody. Yeah, just line up each center line, just tack the back. One drop is all you need back there. For now, it's always better to tack it all in position. Now, while it's tacked like that, now you can raise this up until the center line. Obviously, in some cases, we can't check it. That's why we have the gauge, so we can check the front. I go to this is my personal balsa wood collection. The squares usually come, couple of tips. They come in bundles when you buy them. Obviously, we put kits together from time to time, so we have plenty of these. But what I want to do is take a bundle apart and find 6 relatively straight ones. Now, normally, not every one of these is straight. In any wood cutting operation, you're certainly not going to get every single one to be straight. But it's a good idea, and this is really cheap insurance to save you from having a pretzel instead of a wing. Take them one by one, take a look down them. That one's got a spring in it. Let's just go right through the pack, because we'd like to get, that one's got a little twist. Mike, can you get the phone? I just want to find the squares. That's got a bow in it. Now you see what's nice about this is you can just, once you get the straight pieces, you can just pin them. There's no glue on this other than the dots on the trailing edge right now. So you can pretty much move it, maneuver it. We can use pins even to hold it in position. Although it looks pretty straight right now. It's pretty straight even without the pins.
I'm telling you, this thing is going to be good.
That is really excellent. Okay, we're going to start at one end of the wing, holding that. Line up the center line, put a pin, and in this case, when we don't have wood where the hole is, we can just pin right through the back of the wing like that. And the pine is nice and soft. Now let's go to the next wing, line that up, push a pin through one in the back. Boy, these are great pins. I got these from John Pothier. These are really working. Some kind of surgery pins or something. You really only need one in each one to really make this work. And you can check it. Now, nothing is glued. The spars aren't glued or anything. Everything is still loose. We'll get it all pinned in position before we even touch it with CA. Now, the idea here is you have your redundant check. You know that this is on center. This is a given amount off table. You know that your center line and this is a given amount. And you know that the front is a given amount referenced off of the gauge, where the gauge is pointing. So you have 3 double checks for each station as you work your way down. The only thing that's going to probably happen, we're going to run out of pins. These are the best pins. I don't know, these are surgery pins or something. These work great. John Pothier gave me, I got to find out where to get some more of them. They're really good. And by the way, they go right into that soft pine. Oh, that's beautiful. Just check each one as you go. The spikes if we have to, as you go right down. Just work your way right down.
Ooh, look how nice.
It's nice having a center line on there, even if you didn't need it for this, but
yeah,
it's a good redundancy check. You can actually pin that right into the center line.
Look how nice.
He pins his finger. Ah, it hurts so bad. Oh.
Holy mackerel.
Before he started bleeding on the video here. And pin it right in there, baby. And one thing we could have done, we could have put more holes in the blocks at various heights. You know, make the blocks like Swiss cheese. That would have helped a little bit. All pinned up?
Almost.
I'm thinking if you're going to make the blocks, now see we've learned as we've gone, make 2 or 3 levels of holes in them just to make it easier. But even at that, just pinning right into the pine is real easy. It's no problem at all.
Okay.
All right, it's ready, right?
Ready.
Okay. Other side too, it looks straight. You could sight right down. You can look right in the rod hole from the other end and see if it's straight. That gives you a good indicator too.
Right on the money. Nice.
Start out at the tip and just pin each one, and then we want to do a double check that we're the same height off the table with the center of the front of the wing, because this in essence is going to be our marker. When we sand out the wing, this is going to be our alignment. When we start sanding through the sheeting and coming into this piece, this will tell us where the center of the wing is. So we don't want to have that piece up or down. I'd like to have that as close as possible. We decided to pin every one and just went right down the whole thing. Now the spar isn't glued in. Check it out again. Get the gauge and check for the center of the leading edge. If that's right, then you can pin the leading edge. Then the last thing, we'll squeeze the spar into the rib. First, before you do anything, you want to make sure that leading edge is right on the money. And if it isn't, this is the time to adjust it. Because in essence, it's really the leading edge we want to have aligned. Right on the money, or?
You're in, kid.
All right. And get the bottle with the thin CA, and let's tack the leading edge on. We'll just tack the leading edge on for right now. You know, don't make a permanent joint. Just get a little drop on each side. That's plenty good. And the spar will still be floating, and we'll check the alignment again. Just kind of sand that, get that a nice tight joint. Realized, of course, because we're trying to put even the mistakes on tape, we can't put the pins through the front because it'll be difficult or impossible to get them out once we have the sheeting on. So we just need to go back, put the pins all in the back. This error was basically caused by Mike and I daydreaming or something here. But anyway, that's the kind of stuff that as you go along, you'll invent little ways, and you'll say, oh gee, I shouldn't have done that. And usually the second or third time, the job will go twice as fast. Now I was using this before. Just use this as your alignment tool. Get your alignment in the front and then put the pin in from the back. That works perfect.
Okay, that looks good there.
Okay, so these little things, little fine tuning that you have to do as you go along, And because we're writing an article and taking still photographs for this at the same time we're doing this, it's you know, we're trying to fine tune all the little errors that we can out of it. We just want to get this out of our way because every time you walk by you tend to walk into it. Okay, you're all trimmed out there.
Book of Beans Johnson.
Okay, just tacking down each joint of the leading edge. Nothing of the spar, just of the leading edge. And then after that's done, let's check that whole plane that we're still flat.
Okay.
Check it out, check that we're flat. You're not rising up or going down. Then I'd like to do the bottom spars next. Tack it to each rib. Don't glue it in solid, just do a little tack on it.
Brand new.
What Mike is doing is getting in and just forcing each one up just enough so you get a nice tight glue joint before we tack it in. Tack the bottom first. Obviously you want to make real sure that you don't get glue right onto the blocks as you're gluing this in place. One drop will do it on each rib. Bottom, and then we'll reverse the whole scenario for the top. Kind of looking to see that each one of these is nice and flat. You don't have one of these sticking up 1/8 of an inch or something. Okay, we're ready to do the top. He's just tacking the top in now, one right after another. The reason I like to tack everything in rather than put complete full glue joints on everything is if you see you're putting a bend, a twist, a bow, something that you're not happy with, well, you can just pop these apart. It doesn't tear itself apart. Once the whole wing is framed out, you can put it in your lap and run glue joints around each rib, under the sheeting, in the back. It's real easy to do that. But right now we just want to have everything held in place, just tacked in place for one setting here while we get ready to do the sheeting. We have to make the little splice in the middle, the spar splice. Lay out the sheeting. Boy, this is going together nice. This is exceeding my wildest expectation here. What are we into this now? About 2 hours?
That's it.
Little less than 2 hours. We had about 2 hours to make the jig. We did a landing gear layup and this in 5 hours. This is under 2 hours to get to this point in the wing. And I think anybody that has the jig could do it, probably could do it faster than us because we're doping everything out here, trying to get it on video in a way that makes sense so people could pick this information right up. Make the little spar joiner. That spar joiner you can make out of spruce. You can put some carbon fiber over that if you think it's necessary. What I do is when I put the wing in a fuselage, I leave at least 1/8 of an inch of the bell crank bolt hanging out, and then use plywood inside the fuselage. So this is really just used as a spar connector. You can use those pieces of scrap that we had. You know, go between the 2 ribs, actually between 4 ribs, and just leave it a little big on one side. Glue it in. You can do that. That's pretty easy to do.
Yep.
While you're doing that, I'm going to lay out the wood. Now we want to get some A-grain for the leading edge. A-grain meaning we can bend it, and we'd like to have some C-grain. This looks like some really nice C-grain for the center section, but if you try to put C-grain on the leading edge, it's a problem. You want to use C-grain for ribs and for center sheeting. We got a lot of nice C-grain here. I hope we have some A-grain. Yeah, actually this is unusual that we got more C-grain than A-grain, but we will go through this. Hopefully we need four pieces of A. Actually we could use the C-grain on the trailing edge, so I'll take the straightest piece of C-grain and rip off the pieces for the trailing edge. That'd be real nice to have them on a trailing edge. Being we have them, it's especially nice. Oh, here's a nice piece, thank you. This one is nice. This is a nice leading edge piece. Let's leave that up there for the leading edge. Another beautiful, you got 2, okay. There's another nice one. Another nice one. Notice all the wood has already been pre-weighed, pre-graded. But even though we're not looking for the lightest piece, what we're looking for is for the leading edge to be able to bend that nice, and for the center to have the hardest pieces. So right under the fuselage, right there is where we want to have it nice and stiff to keep the wing nice and rigid. Okay, we got 3 or 4 here. Oh, you're lucky. You got 4 out of that pile. You lucky dog. You must be going to church regularly.
Every Sunday.
Okay.
Me and the Jamester.
Okay. Okay, you're going to trim that up, lay that piece in, and then we could start on the sheeting. This is the easiest way to make that little tapered spar splice. Just grind away at it. Just do a little test fit. If you need to cut more off,
A little bit more.
take a little more. Once you get a nice fit, obviously run some CA right down both sides. Get a nice tight fit in there. Okay, got that splice glued in there, Mike?
Yep.
Okay.
Brand new.
Now make the same thing on the bottom, just replicate it onto the bottom. We're all set on that.
Okay.
Stripped up a piece of sea grain as per the plans. You tack glue it right up against that piece in the back. That back sets the trailing edge straight. And you can put one drop on the front of each rib and just let it, let it run down. One dot will just let it run underneath.
Maybe I should have cleaned my fingernails before I...
A bath wouldn't have been a bad idea either.
All
Saludi cologne, as John would say. Okay, next step, obviously now, we want to make a little tongue joint under here. So put a little piece the size of a postage stamp under there. Doesn't have to be fancy, just take a piece of scrap. Cut this end piece off, then you know it'll be the right size. May as well trim that while we're waiting. Then we can just nail the other side in. We can go right onto the leading edge here. All right. Splices, we just chamfer it to get rid of the stress riser. And you can just hold that in with your bare hand and put a drop of that CA on it. And glue right to the back, sure.
Oh, my finger.
Glue your finger there and glue your feet to the table.
Ooh, it's hot.
Hotter for you than for me. Okay, now you got a little shelf edge.
Right.
You can glue that piece on. Lay out your other piece of sea grain. Ooh, that's coming out
here.
Yeah, that's very nice.
That's a...
Check that you have the straight edge going on the straight edge, because the other edge you're going to sand anyway. Just pop that right in. Same thing as the other side. Doesn't get a lot easier than this. Just squeeze each one as you go. Keeps a nice tight joint. Because that is a joint, if you don't get it nice and tight, you'll see that come through the paint. It'll be a pain in the neck to sand it then. With that much done, you can just go right ahead. But we need better pins. Where's John Pothier's pins when we need them? We're using the bottom of the barrel of the pins here. Okay, we're about ready to put that leading edge sheeting on, that's for sure. Now, I always say at this point in time, use all new XL blades. Don't fool around using used up blades. We have to take into account, when I put this sheet on here, we need to take a little pie slice out to get this joint centered. Get the piece taken off the end. So we're just laying this out and roughing out the sheet that will become the leading edge sheeting. Just estimated where this is going to end. I want to leave a little extra. I want to cut this piece. We have the joint in the middle. And then I want to find a spot where the spar ends and connect that. So we don't have anything to trim off when we're finished. I'd rather trim this ahead of time than later. On the front, and estimate, leave yourself an extra 1/8 of an inch where this is going to end here. Okay, and then connect the dot. Well, let me get it from the end. Okay. You know what? Yeah, that's good. Now leave yourself an extra, say, 1/16 of an inch. Okay. Make sure that bends. Okay, you got it. Now you want to leave it the full length in the middle. Just connect the dots with the 4-foot straight edge. Hold one under the ruler. It's always easy to lay out the sheeting before you have to go back and trim it. Once it's glued in, it's a pain to do this. It's always easier if you pin this down. Now, if you're not working to try to make any time, you could, basically put some slow drying glue on there, some even ambroid or aliphatic resin. But we want to make some time here. In fact, we're running out of time. So we're going to just pin this in place and then run a bead of CA on the inside as we're going along and just squeeze it down and squeeze out all the extra glue. You put a little kink in that little extension tube is good. And the trick here is to get the glue joint squeezed, but don't press down on it. If you press down on it, then you obviously run the risk of putting a bow in it. We're using this little tight bond alphatic resin because we're at the end of this session, and what's going to happen, we're going to pin this leading edge down on both sides, and that'll be about the time Mike has to leave. So rather than try using CA, this will let it dry in the jig overnight, and we'll check all the alignments before we really finalize this and let the glue dry overnight. Next time we work on this, needless to say, we hope this whole thing will be locked in. We got like another half an hour, Mike?
No, actually
20 minutes?
15 minutes.
Okay, well, if you don't get the second piece on, don't worry about it. We'll get what we can. We'll just get this piece pinned down and we're all set. The idea is to get plenty of a bead on the leading edge of the ribs, so this will just lay right down in position. Okay, just a little bit of ammonia on the top of this lets the sheet just relax and go right back down. If you didn't want to use ammonia, Windex water would do, but not to soak it through, just to relieve the outside. That swells the outside and kind of pushes it down into that curve. And when you're done, just pin it in. Now the idea is to squeeze it against the spar. Don't push down on it, just squeeze it against the spar. Oh, that's laying right down nice. And when that dries overnight, it also puts that bend in the leading edge, relaxes the wood. Okay, let's just clean up. We'll leave it right in a jig for the next time you can come over. That's fine. Now the nice thing is, had we built this in the usual way on the table, right now I wouldn't be able to use the table for other projects, but being it's in this fixture, we could pick the fixture right up, lay it over on another part of the shop. It'll come right up and we're off the hook until we get a time to work on it again. Hey, this morning Mike made a significant advancement in the world of model aviation. He didn't forget his glasses. And he brought a box of pins. What a hero.
What a guy.
Alright, some of this stuff he's taking the pins out. We checked. We cited that we haven't lost any of our straightness, of course. Check the leading edge. And we were discussing this morning, the object of doing this working together is we talked about making a piece of wood with a V-notch in it to lay out here. When Mike had tried that, he said he already tried that at home, and he wound up some of the CA got onto the wood and it kind of boogered up the leading edge. So we're going to go with the system we have right now, but that may be one of the things we do in the future. Anyway, the next step is going to be, and we are going to make at the end of this a pattern of that leading edge, so we have a pattern. We're going to make a pattern for the center sheeting, and we're going to answer the phone. Same kind of splice as we did on the trailing edge. You can just tack glue that in if you want. Grain going this way, and this gives us a little shelf to work off. Good idea, and I've learned the hard way. When you have your finger in there and you run a bead of CA, you always glue your finger to the wood. And just run a bead in there and try to get your finger or something underneath. Get your finger under. Try not to glue your finger to the part, and then take the pins out. And that gives you a little lip. Now the next piece will be to lay this out. It'll just be a repeat of this. So Mike, now when we're finished with the wing, we're not going to do it right now. When we flip it over, we're going to make another piece and make a pattern so that when we do the bottom, in other words, when you lay this piece out, Mike, right, and it fits, flip it over, make sure it fits on here. Right. And then we'll take a piece of scrap wood and make a pattern and mark it and leave it with the wing jig. So in the future, the next guy can just copy that. He doesn't have to go through plotting it out and laying it out and everything on his own. It'll save the next guy a little bit of time that uses the jig.
Okay.
This is pretty much redundant. And again, there's a lot of good ways to build a wing. We have videos on the rod method. our version of the lost foam method, Tsunami from 1994. Bobby Hunt's videos of doing it the Billy Werwidge way and his lost foam way. There's a lot of ways to do a wing, and really to decide for yourself, you should try each one at least once and then make an educated decision which is right for you. There's advantages and disadvantages to every way. There's no one magic way, but this way has proven to be about the fastest way I've ever seen to make a wing. I mean, we've cut our previous time. For the center sheeting, you really like to have, if possible, a piece of C grain. This is really nice and rigid. C grain typically is stiff in this dimension. It doesn't want to bend around a leading edge, so you'd like to have A grain for the leading edge, C grain for the center. Now Mike's just trimming up the middle here, and we're going to make the piece pretty much lay it out right off the plan. And then when we're all done with that piece, we're going to make a pattern to go with the wing jig so that the next person, of course using the jig, can save all the layout time. Mike measured out the rib space, how many ribs are covered, and just going to put a 90-degree cut in the wood first. Then we're going to, the next step will be to lay out the angle of the leading edge. It's a good time to get a nice new XL blade in there so you get nice clean cuts. What Mike's doing is taking a piece of wood, this is basically a piece of 1/4 by 3/8, and just laying it up even with the leading edge, so we're transposing an angle down onto the wood. And this makes it that you get a relatively decent joint right away. And we'll use a Brodak cutting pad, an XL cutting pad, to get a real nice joint there. Now we want to cut that real accurately with a ruler. Take the pins out, and that gives us the leading edge joint in one stroke of the pen. By the way, anybody doesn't have one of these pads, when you're doing real accurate cuts that you're not going to sand, these are available right from John Brodak. Save a lot of wear and tear on those XL blades. And what Mike did is, a good little trick is to back cut it. In other words, the angle on this doesn't have to be exactly 90. If you leave it a little bit less, then you get that nice tight wood joint. Just cut it back just a little bit so that you don't have a 90-degree angle. It's back just a little bit, just like you would when you install molding. Measure the plots right up off the plan. Put the little radius in there. You want to have a little radius. It's real important not to make that a 90-degree angle, or you lose the benefit of not having a stress riser. Okay, then we want to transpose the lines, get a nice new XL blade in here, and get that cut with a real nice sharp edge. Now we're making up that pattern on what amounts to be a scrap piece of wood. We'll mark it pattern. We'll be able to use it to plot the bottom out without having to replot it. And the next person that makes a wing using this jig can just trace that out. We'll do the same thing with the back piece of sheeting. These little radiuses are real important to keep in. You don't want to have a point there. The silk span will tend to wrinkle up there. And it also kills the stress riser. You notice we're not coming in from a spar and a no spar. We're kind of using an easement. And it gets rid of the stress riser. You always want to lay out sheeting or sparring with some kind of an easement, not a place where it starts and it stops. That'll always be the weakest point right there. It's marking up the end of where the glue is going to go. Use some relatively thick or medium CA. Okay, now you know where the CA on each rib is going to end. Just lay out the beads. Ignore the front joint until everything is glued down, and then we can push some tension and get a nice smooth bead in the front. Now Mike's put in all the cap strips on the one side, and we always like to have in the last one that goes up against the tip a little bit of a radius in the corner, so that it matches the little bit of a radius on the sheeting up on the other end. You always use a nice little piece of tubing with a piece of sandpaper. The last little bit, get it in with the tubing with the sandpaper. Okay, we're ready. Now, one of the choices we have, Mike, while it's still in the jig, if you want to, we can trim off this top of the trailing edge so that this is even, okay? But the disadvantage of that is the thickness of the trailing edge is helping keep the wing warp free at the back.
Right.
So I think maybe we'll just leave that on till we take the wing out for the final time. I think that would be the better way of doing it. Okay, Mike's got all the cap strips in, and boy, it doesn't get a lot easier than this. Okay, Mike's running a knife down the trailing edge, just delaminating the glue that's on there, and then we'll pull this right out. Now, if for some reason while you were putting cap strips or sheeting you get one block, a drop of glue on it, you want to get in there with a knife, obviously, and pop that. Unless you've glued the whole wing to the jig, you shouldn't really have a problem. Let's see if you can. Good thing to wiggle it back and forth and see if you're missing any spots. Is it still hooked on anything?
Yep, here it comes.
All right, here it comes. No problem. Just do a wiggle. Just wiggle it. Same as when you take the rods out. See, it's such a nice tight fit. There we go. Oh, I love it. That's what gives it the integrity. Well, what do you think, King?
There you go.
All right, way to go.
How about
Leave that trailing. Now you're probably thinking, and probably rightfully so, how did he get it in the jig with the cap strips on? Well, you know what? If you really want to know the truth, we had to take the cap strips off because we didn't think that through. But because this is the first time we're using the jig, of course, you know, this is the things we have to figure out ahead of time. Anyway, the wing, we needed to trim a couple of these back a little bit just because the wood was not really totally straight, but it's certainly straight enough. We just ran an XL blade in there. But now what we're going to do is, where's that gauge, the height gauge? As Mike is doing this, we've been going down. Look, he puts the safety on. We're tough. We don't need the safety. We're already bleeding all over the table. Anyway, we've been checking every station as we go along before Mike puts the pins in, just as a double check. And by the way, we found another. See, this is the thing. We're trying to figure this out ahead of time. What we want to do is the center pieces, we're going to put sheetrock screws in so that they, in effect, when you go to do the middle of the wing, you can just back the screws out and take the blocks out. We were also thinking of another upgrade, if you were going to make one of these from scratch, would be to make the blocks just a little bit wider and put them in with sheetrock screws so that you could take them off, move them, adjust them. Right now, if we knew that in the beginning, maybe we would have put this together with screws. But this way certainly went quick enough, fast enough. And we're going to check each station as we go along here. Looks like we're certainly well within the range of any wing like this that we've ever built before. This piece is helping hold the trailing edge from warping until all the gluing is in and all the webbing. So, even though we paid a terrible price for our education, I tell you, all education is expensive. And because the block's a nice soft pine, line up the center line on each block, and it's been working just great. As soon as we check that we're in alignment all around the front, all around the back, we'll just reverse the whole thing. Sheet the leading edge, we have a pattern now. Sheet the middle, we have a pattern. Sheeting the bottom should be relatively quick. And we can cap strip the bottom. We just can't cap strip the top. Let's make a mental note of that, Mike.
Well,
Remember.
We got it.
Now you're probably thinking, why didn't he just back up the video and nobody would know? You know what? People would know. This is not a Saturday Night Live here. This is Kajeski's Wing Construction Company. And we try to have fun while we're working here. We try to, anyway. You can see how nice and neat the alphatic joints are on this. And we took some alphatic resin, put a little bit of water in it, and we're just putting a little bead. This is going to be the joint that you see on the top of the plane. This is the one that's really going to matter here. On a wing where we're not going to have wing mounted gear, we're going to have carbon fiber gear in this plane. We made a little plug just to keep the contour nice and straight here. Mike made that up out of a little piece of scrap. He's starting to fit up the leading edges on the bottom, but the first thing we have to do before you do anything is I got to make up the bell crank and the lead outs, right, and get that plug there. You can cut out the, what you can do while I'm doing that is cut the lead out, cut the leading edge sheeting to shape, right, and then we'll make a pattern to put with our wing stuff.
Okay.
Make the 2 leading edge sheets, make the center sheet. While you're doing that, I'll make up the bell crank, and hopefully we'll get that in today. Okay, Mike glued on the trailing edge, nothing special about that, but what we wanted to do, made up the controls off camera. That's not part of what we're going to do on this video, is making controls, but want to cut this piece out with a nice brand new number 11 XL blade, dress all the edges off. We're going to mount the bell crank temporarily to the back of that little spar reinforcement. Made up a standard bell crank, Pro Stunt product bell crank, wired on the end, solid lead outs, 032, 48 inches long with the little fish hook end as a redundancy system, and that's all set to put in. Okay, now you can put that little temporary piece. This is just holding it in temporary. This is a little piece.
Gotta notch it out.
Notch it out a little bit more so it's a nice fit, and put one on the bottom. What we do is we put the bell crank in with 1 drop of glue just to hold it. Make sure everything is free and easy. Make sure we're not running into things here. We can cut some of that rib away later. Come in here, look down the lead out holes and make sure it's level, it's parallel to the center line of the wing, which it is. And once it is, then we can put it in temporarily. See, that 1 drop of glue just holds it. Leave a little bit of the wire out so that once this is in the fuselage, we're going to put a plywood piece across here. The plywood piece in the fuselage holds this. This is just a temporary, just to hold it in temporarily. Okay, you got that little piece?
Yep.
And we're sneaking up on the end of this session, but maybe we'll probably be able to do some work on this tomorrow. In the meantime, we learned a lot today. Don't put the cap strips on the top. Then, other than that, I guess we're okay. Yeah, that's good. Squeeze that nice and tight up against the bolt. That's a good way to do it. And then we'll trim the top of that bolt off. Okay, this session is over, and because Mike has the pieces all laid out, he should be able to finish this up tomorrow. Should be a very nice, easy project. We've been working on this and then going over to, in the warm part of the day, do some roofing, but then cleaning trees out and stuff, so we've really only been putting in about 3-4 hours a session, but we're getting a lot done. So far, the jig has worked very well. Okay, Mike bright and early gets here, ready to rock, and boy, I wish he had the energy that eagle on his shirt has. Okay, the first thing before we seal this up, we always grease all the control surfaces with some kind of motorcycle chain lube, which goes in. This has been sitting out in the garage, so it's really cold. But you would want to grease, you can grease it too, Mike, all the moving parts, wiggle it around a little bit, grease them again. Let that get a nice coating of grease on it, and then we can get ahead and just seal it up. We're not going to put too much of this on the top. It's basically redundant for what we did on the top of the wing, just repeating it over and over. But being we have a pattern, a template to work off, should make it a lot easier. Now, PJ1 goes on when it's not frozen cold.
Oh.
Yeah, just let it sit there. It'll kind of droodle down in there. That's how you grease the chain of modern motorcycles. We religiously made patterns up for everything. We saved a lot of time doing the bottom of the wing. We got this, and we can just leave that with the wing jig. That'll make making all these patterns a lot quicker. Controls all greased up there, and you're all set to go. Then just okay, you're all greased, so to speak.
All greasy,
ready to rock. Okay. Now, even though we've had to do some pretty intense outdoor work, we did get this is the third day we're working on this. And possibly if we had started and not made a little error of putting the cap strips, but what's really happened that's really good is Mike and I, in the course of doing this, have come up with what we feel is going to be an even improved version of this wing jig, and Mike's already got the guy at the lumberyard cutting us some blocks, and we're going to, at the end of doing this wing, scrape this side clean, flip it over, use the other side, and we have an even better way that we think is going to be an improvement on this. I don't know if we're going to be able to squeeze it onto this tape, but it'll be on one of the tapes. And that's what you learn from doing something. Okay, now you got the one side, the web is in, and you're ready to do the back side. We like to get the web in while it's still in the jig. That helps lock in the trailing edge, along with the fact that that whole back piece is still in there. Should keep it relatively warp free. Oh, they're fitting in there very nice, very nice. Closing in, the last thing, Mike's going to run the webbing right down the end, and then let's remember this, Mike, we'll do the cap strips on the bottom only.
Yeah.
Not the top. And then before we take it out of the jig, we'll trim all that extra wood off. Actually, we could take it out of the jig first. And then we answer the phone. President Nixon calling. All right, that's nice. You're closing in on this. I'm amazed. I'm amazed. A man of precision.
And only one Band-Aid.
Show him your Band-Aid now, Mike.
There's my Band-Aid.
When you work with new XL blades and you talk on the phone and eat a bagel, that's what happens. We both got cut on this job already. God, dangerous work. You think it's dangerous? You should be a fish. I swim upside down. Look at poor Ernie. Ernie never misses a chance to swim upside down. Look at this guy. He's doing loops for us while we're feeding him this lunchtime. Poor Bert and Ernie. I love to swim. There I go. Loop. There we go. Cubanate. All right, you're back, Mike. He's back up, right side up.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he's looking at your wing. It's making him crazy. Okay, you're taking all the pins out.
All the pins are
All the cap stripping's done. See, that come out a beautiful. Webbing's done. Sheeting's done. I would let it sit in a jig until the next time you're going to work on it.
Right.
It can't hurt because it's pinned in nice and straight. Just let it sit until the next time you have a day to work on it. And then we can take it outside, trim that trailing edge, sand the leading edge, get it all trimmed up, and do the tips. That'll be real nice. Good day. Hey, you got a lot done today.
Day 4 of the wings.
Day 4 emerges of the wonderful wing, Mike's wing construction. I guess the first thing we want to do today is get a brand new blade, trim that trailing edge, and we can get it, you can actually sand it while it's right in the jig. Sand it parallel to the trailing edge. That could be while it's right in the jig. And we still have to flip it over and do the cap strip, so.
The second time.
Right, now what the idea of leaving it on right to the last minute is it helps hold it completely straight. You see how nice and straight that is? If we trimmed that off earlier, it would not have held it while it was sitting in. It's been sitting 4 days now. We worked on this 3 days. Today's the 4th day. So it's just been sitting in position. Try to keep it as totally straight and warp free as possible. Keep the blade a 1/16 of an inch off the wood. And this way you do the last little bit with the sanding block. What helps a whole lot too is having these end grain pieces webbing, so you have a complete box section. Just don't get it too low or else we're going to have to make a patch. And obviously a good time for one of those brand new XL blades. By the way, looking over stunt news, you see that Lincoln log wing?
Yeah, I seen that.
That's almost, well, a similar way of jigging the whole thing up. Okay. Okay, now we have the little wood that's here we want to remove with either a plane or a sanding block. You can get a nice edge on that while it's still in the fixture.
Yeah.
You can almost get it off in one piece, huh?
Yeah.
Now just take little bites. Leave the last little bit there. Get the last little bit off with a sanding block. Yeah, you got it in one piece. Beautiful.
Ooh.
What a guy. Get that whole edge. Basic. Oh, yeah. Now, just the one thing you don't want to do is catch one of these with the corner of that sanding block.
Yeah.
And you know you've done that already, right?
Yep.
Because then we want to take the big sanding block and go right down the caps and everything and do like an airflow thing right over the whole, while it's right nice in a jig. Pull out the pins, baby. Pull them out.
We're pulling. Always give them a little twist.
Now, one thing at least we know, you don't have to put it back in a jig so you can cap strip the other side. We could lay that blanket. What we did, we rolled up the blanket that we use here on the table. Once we're basically done with the jig now. And you can get Louis to lip from Lodi to, he could be our next victim on making a wing. If he wants to come over here and make it, we'll give him a hand. Anyway, we could have done this in one afternoon if we didn't have that roofing stuff to work on. You got to stop working for a living. That's the whole key.
I'll quit.
Aren't there any rich women, any rich older women in your neighborhood that?
No, they're all wise to me.
They know you're a scammer, huh?
They know I'm looking.
Okay. All right, just get the pins out and we'll flip it over. Give it a big flip. Pull out.
Roll out.
Okay, pull it out slow. Now don't just hit it with an axe. Oh, I heard something crack. See if you get little drops of glue in there.
Sometimes you get a little. When you put the webbing in over here, that's.
The webbing, yeah, you get drips. You know what you could do to avoid that? Just take a little Simonize and put it on the blocks. Or put a little PVA, that green stuff.
Yeah.
Because you're not gluing anything to it. Just go back and forth, back and forth. All right. Let's see how it looks. Oh, yeah. You better put that right in the rack for me. I'll take that.
Thanks.
Okay, now you can do the cap strips first. Now we're done with the jig.
Right.
You take the jig and put it up somewhere else where we don't need it. But one thought I had was, while we're not using a jig, we shouldn't lay it on a floor. We should stand it straight up and down.
Right.
You think so?
Yep.
We should stand it up and down and maybe somewhere where there's not going to be a lot of moisture. Now we're going to redo this jig. This is not the final thing. This was our first run through. Actually, there's the first wing we made with it. But just to see how this was going to work. Mike's going to upgrade this, and the next time we see him, he's going to have all the new blocks in with little screws holding them in. And right, Mike?
Yes, Mike.
Of course, right, Wendy.
Whatever you say.
Oh, yeah, okay. Now what's left is to cap strip the bottom, trim the back of the trailing edge, and we'll be ready to do some final sanding here. Okay, you're trimming up all the edges. Take all the loose stuff off the edges. And we'll take it outside and a block of sander it. Let's see. Okay, you want to, of course, the lead out one, just put the lead outs in there. Block sand, that you can do down here in the shop. And then we want to get a big sanding block. Get all these plain cuts out of here and everything. And we can you can take some of that material thickness off the whole piece.
Yep. Man, my hands are sweating like crazy today. Whew. How am I doing?
Go ahead. Grind it up. Get a nice smooth edge. So the tips will sit nice and flat there too.
tips.
We could just tuck the lead outs right into the last rib bay when we get this all evened up. Just true up till you get all the cap strips trued up. Each one, just feel each one, and this one's still, you know, when you can't feel the glue seam anymore. When you're trying to pick up high spots, you can take this as just common ordinary chalk. The chalk will help you pick up the high spots, and then you can just now sand all the chalk off, and when you have no chalk left, you know, you've got all of these little seams then perfect. And you can just obviously go right down and do one bay at a time. I would like to get as much of the leading edge done. In fact, we're going to set up a little table out in the garage to sand outside, so we're not making dust for Karen to breathe in here, but you can. What you want to do, you want to try to get it that you have the same amount showing top and bottom before you even do the radius. And then we'll look for these little rubber guys. I had these little rubber, well, this is not the right shape. These, I have some with the reverse cut. We'll look through the little tool chest there. So you can get a lot of it with that. You want to be able to see that whole leading edge because that's your center line. Now the rest we can get with those little sanding shapes. Let's get that toolbox out that has them all in there.
Okay.
Come in all different shapes. This is part of the Porter cable sanding there. They get all different shapes. You can buy these individually, by the way. They're called polywogs or frogs or something. But anyway, this is one you use around fillets. Real handy. This one, you want to get a piece of that paper, get it stuck in there and then trim it off. This, of course, is the sticky back automotive paper that we always use. In that shape, you should be able to make a nice little radius on the leading edge using that shape. I think we'll do this outside, though, just to keep the dust down. Do the final sanding outside. You can see we got the fish pond all covered up. Oh, it's cold out here. Too cold for words. Anyway, we got a great little idea. Look, Mike's making a nice little sanding table. All right, way to go. And maybe what we could do, Mike, make a big X. Here's some duct tape. Don't throw the scraps away. No. This is a bedding pad, which, by the way, we would use this way, except it's dirty. It's got grease on. Maybe make a big X in it, or a couple pieces around the end. I want to make like a little, just a table that we can use here for doing the sanding, only because we can't sand inside the house. That'll work good. Now, Mike just got out of jail recently, and the judge gave him, he had two choices. He had community service, 200 hours, or he could come sand wings in Wendy's garage for the rest of, notice the ball and chain on his foot. Anyway, this is coming out nice. This is the point at which if you spend an hour truing up the cap strips, truing up the ribs, an hour spent now is like 10 hours once it's in silver. When you let this stuff go till it's in silver, you're a dead man. This is when you have to make the commitment. By the way, that little pad's working out okay, huh, Mike? Is it better if you have a little chair?
No. This is fine. If I have a chair, I'll fall asleep.
No, I like to work standing up. Some people like to sit down. I like to stand up. Yes, yes. Now, you can always put a little chalk. If you think there's a high spot, take a little chalk. I don't know where you had it. Take a little chalk. The chalk will pick up the high spot right away. And when you sand, now when I do the I-beamer, I have to do the same thing. I have to chalk up all the ribs. Wouldn't hurt if we got a new piece of chalk. See if Jamie has some new chalk. And when you make all the chalk disappear and breathe it all in, the main thing is that you breathe it all in.
That's right. You don't want to live forever.
Nah, that's really looking good. That's going to be a nice wing. May get the tissue it this weekend. Now you just got to watch if you just happen to catch a cap strip. Obviously you can't go this way. But once you get a little feel for just how hard to push down, you can get them blended right in. Well, you can even see the dust flaking off of there. The thing with the leading edge, Mike, you see how this is opening up as you make the sheeting paper thin?
Yeah.
It tends to open up the joint. So what you do is take some thin CA, paint it on it, and just wipe it with a paper towel.
Right.
And that'll seal it up at the same time before you do a final sanding on that. Now Mike got one side finished. He's on this last end here. Did you radius all the cap strips? Just do a rough radius?
Yep.
Anything that's exposed to an open bay, just touch it either with a nail file or with even a sanding block. I get these edges too, so you don't have any sharp edges. Just go right down the whole open bays. You get as many of the edges dressed off now as you can. It just saves time later on, boy, big time. Okay, that ends day 4 of the great Kajeski wing jig experiment. And he's going to leave it here because it's pouring rain out there and we don't want to get it wet. Anyway, we'll pick this up tomorrow. Okay, now today Mike took the blocks that come in the kit. We're going to glue the two lightest ones together for the inboard tip, the 2 heaviest ones for the outboard tip. Just tack glue them together. Tack glue them on the plane so that, in fact, you know you could do this the easy way, Mike, is just tack glue on, put some pins on each end, and let's trace that out and we can hack off with the saw a lot of the extra material.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
We'll just tack them on or pin them on, it doesn't matter. Just make sure the center line is up where the center line is, and I can get all of this material off with a saw. Just save a lot of carving time here.
Okay. Let me get something right.
Okay, with these pinned in, and obviously what we'll do is make a tracing on the outboard wing.
All right.
And we can lop a lot of this
when I
wood
get down
off.
here, I'll stop and see you.
We can do a lot of this without even
Okay.
having it on the wing.
Bye.
You use the heavy one for the outboard one. You weight them up. Weight them up on the grain scale, use the heavy one. Otherwise, you just, you're spinning your wheels here.
Right. We didn't weigh them yet.
Okay, take the other one off.
We didn't weigh them yet.
Weigh them both, make sure. It won't matter, you got the same tracing on both sides. Let's get them both exactly the same. Use the light one for the outboard, light one for the inboard. Off the scale. One is a
53 and a half.
Yeah, all right, weigh it up. I mean, it's no point. You're only putting, first off, you're putting all that extra work into lightening something up when it could be a lighter piece of wood to begin with.
53 and a half.
Just like when we built the wing, you can put the heavy sheeting on the outboard wing and all that kind of stuff. There's no end to how much you can get. That now you can minimize the amount of tip weight that you have to put in it.
58.
Quite a bit, huh? This is just to get the part as much of the wood off as possible early on. And believe me, we're both tired. We spent the whole morning hanging a chandelier for Karen. We got it up though. What a job. You think this was easy? Forget about it. Anyway, back to building. All right, you got it. See, that's how much of that material you can get off in one shot. Just a whole lot less carving to do, especially up here where it's end grain. It really does save you a lot of work when you can get all that off in one shot. The idea is to get as much material off of here as you can before you have to actually tack glue it on and do the final sanding. Get as much of the material off. It's just easier to do it in your hand like this. All the stuff you can get off without even trying. And we got, well, kind of roughed out here. Next step, let's get these tacked on, and what Mike's going to do, he's going to take them home over the weekend, and next time we see them, he'll have wingtips. Famous last words, right? Anyway, even just getting that much roughed out is a lot easier than putting those big blocks on and carving them, that's for sure. Yeah, just tack glue them on. That's the best way. And of course you want to try to keep the center lines on center. Ready to do the other one?
Yep.
Trick is to avoid carving down when Mike's going to be over at his house carving. Put some tape on this side and you just carve down into the tape. Don't carve any further than that. That's a good way to keep from making it too thin. Then when it's glued on permanently and hollowed out, we'll take the tape off, put the final sanding on it. Well, through the magic of video, Mike is ready to cover his wing today, and we're going to try to put that part on the end of the tape. He's got all his sanding and prepping, and it's ready for the tissue. Hey, you may think it never gets cold in Jersey, but thanks to Mike, we have this giant time bomb waiting to blow us up here. All right, and make sure that pad is dry. This is the, yeah, that the roof was leaking, I know. Let me get a blanket. Okay, let's. Boy, that thing really puts out some heat. I'm telling you, you want to work outside. Let me go get a blanket so we can. Yeah, I don't want to work on a wet pad. We're using SGM002 medium silk span. You want to cut the 4 pieces ahead of time. We got the jar of Windex ready. We got the long johns on. We got plenty of liquor in the blood. Keep that alcohol level high. You can't believe how cold it is out here. Ooh, we are macho men, men among women. All right, now what you want to do, Mike, is you want
sheets, right?
Right. You want to cut 4, but watch what you want to do now. You want this piece to overlap when you lay it out.
I need 4 pieces, right?
Right. So that the thickness of the body, you've got 2 in the middle. Remember that thing about beefing up the middle?
Yep.
So when you put this on, this sheet you want to go like that. Maybe leave an inch over here. Cut 4 pieces up, have them all cut ready to go, because once we get doping, we'll shut that heat off and go like hell. Okay, you got plenty. You cut all 4 pieces, and we're all set to go. The sooner we can get this done, the better. If there's anybody out there that has to work under battle conditions, boy, this is worth its weight in gold. All it is like a grill, too. There's nothing in there. You probably could put my charcoal grill out here and just start it up.
Yeah, we could.
And we're not gonna die of like no oxygen in the air, are we?
We could start. Oh yeah, you could.
Oh sure we are. Yeah, because I was gonna put one of these ventless fireplaces in the bedroom when I renovated the bedroom. All right, cut it up there.
I think we need some new blades here, kid.
Yeah, we're in dire need of blade. No, what happens? They get dope on them.
Somebody sees me.
A light coating of Windex. You could use water. You could use. And make sure the whole thing is wet to a point, so it shrinks equally. Okay, now we want to dope just the perimeter of the wing. We're doing the bottom first. Dope the perimeter. You got to get the brush from outside. It's still outside, the big brush. What we're going to do is we're going to dope only the perimeter, no cap strips. Then we want this all to shrink up. We'll do the other side, let this side dry, hopefully 10 minutes or so. Flip it over, we'll have the whole thing done in an hour, I hope. Okay, you got the big brush?
Big brush.
Okay, dope just the perimeter now. Don't get any on the cap strips. and put a decent coat on it. Don't fool around trying to make, you know. No, it's clean. It's clean. That was in thinner. I was using that before. Now, with the most important thing to remember is to get the overlap in the middle of this. Without the overlap, you lose a lot of strength. And it's that double tissue in the middle of the wing that really adds the strength. Now, we don't want to get any dope on the cap strips. I'm going to look down here, Mike, and just see. Okay, you got a couple little wrinkles here. Get it good and wet. Try not to get any out over the tissue. Normally, if you're working, when I'm working alone, I like to do the top and then flip it over and do the bottom. But because we're working together and we're working so fast here, we're doing this in a matter of a couple of minutes. We want to get the whole bottom done, do the whole top. And if in doubt, if say for instance the phone rang now or something, just wet this tissue, throw a little Windex on that. But you don't want one side drying and not the other side. You got it cut already. Yep. Just Windex it up. So here's the beauty of working with two people. When you have a second guy, you can just go right through it. When I'm working alone, I always have to plan. I do one panel, flip it over, do the other side. Or if you can't, again, just wet one. You want both sides drying at the same time. That's the key part of this. And this is what the Windex allows you to do. All right. Total time 3 minutes to do the whole. Well, if only this would have way it would work. Oh, if only this heater we could connect this to somebody else's propane bottle. That thing is really nice.
Oh yeah, that's the ticket.
Boy, I'll tell you, that allows you to work out here. I only wish you had one like half the size. That thing really gets hot. But then I guess you could just shut it off whenever it gets too. You have to be a human thermostat.
Yeah, but once you shut it off, it's a pain in the neck to get started.
Yeah, I know. All right, just keep battering that down and press it down with your bare hand. Get those edges to seal up nice. And as soon as you're done, we flip it right over. Now, if for instance, but see, this is still wet here. If for instance, when we were ready to flip this over, this had dried out, we just Windex that down. But you want them both wet and both dry at the same time. And you want the double tissue in the middle of the wing. You never want to have just one piece of tissue. Or some guys, they put the wing in a body and end tissue it right up to the spot where it needs the strength the most. It needs the strength in the middle, not up at the edge of the fillet.
Oh yeah.
All right, it's going good.
Stuff is really great. Excellent.
You had good luck with the dope?
Excellent.
This unsolicited testimony for John Brodak dope by you. And by the way, Mike will accept any free offers for a new razor. We don't have a blade that'll cut this stuff out here.
Unbelievable, this stuff.
I got to order some more blades from John. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, now work the tip. Start down here and just little by little, like just work the wrinkles out. Work your way right around the edge. Did you bring a tip weight box? You could do the tip weight box.
I left it.
All right, well, you're going to take this home tonight anyway, so.
Yeah.
And come back Saturday and we'll do, by then we'll be ready to shoot the silver on it or shoot some filler or something, depending on how much you get done here. Yeah, just batter it down, press it down. That's the whole deal. You don't have a single wrinkle in the top, not even in these tips, which are usually a little bit of a labor-intensive thing to get all the wrinkles out. Hard to do, but I think they look real. That adds a little dimension to the plane. All these guys that want to make like Jacobone with his square wingtips. No. If you're gonna make a Cardinal, it's got to have pointy tips.
Let's have some class here.
Right.
Now we're gonna cut this even, correct?
Yeah. Go even. Put a little bit of tension on it as you cut it. Just go slow. Okay, we're getting that side wet. Now we're going to flip it over and then do that the opposite side. These are both wet. Well, when you have two guys working, this thing just goes boom, done. Okay, press down any wrinkles you still have. Any big wrinkles here? I don't see any real. I don't see anything really we have to worry about.
Excellent.
All right, flip it over. Let's go. Let's go to work. She's gonna get you tonight. All right, the whole deal here now. We're really making some good progress here. Just get right into it. Let's get that tissue and get the third, fourth side done. Keep the bottom sides wet. We wet both sides so everything will dry. With this heat, it's going to dry up in 5 minutes here. Actually, we're working like this thing is really a good unit. Plenty on the middle there. Don't skimp on the middle. All right, Mike's made. How many of these wings you make already? 3 wings?
1, 2, 3.
You got 3 of these, right, to do?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we could sell Brian one. See if Brian wants to buy a wing.
Come on, Brian.
Actually, that wing jig has been working out really well. Really, really nice. All right, again on the top, we're bringing that tissue out so that where the body rests on, there's double tissue top and bottom. Now when we get to the front, we're going to leave about 1/4 inch extra so that the seam for the double silk span is on the bottom of the wing. We'll just leave an extra 1/4, 3/8 of an inch, doesn't really matter. Get all those wrinkles out of the tip?
I'm getting there.
Okay. Press them down. As you're pressing down, squeeze them right and just pull on the edge and press them down. You'll get them out no problem at all, no matter what shape the tip is. Now the same thing would apply if you're doing a Brodak. They have this, the Brodak Cardinal has the same wingtip shape. Just a few less ribs. I got the same ribs, in fact. What am I talking about? Okay. You know what we ought to do is one of those extra wings. If we get one of your wings that comes out too heavy or something, we'll make a big Brodak Cardinal with a big wing.
There you go.
Just put the whole wing in there. Don't even leave anything out. All right, knock it down. Let's get the third one going. Edge, now just wrap it around, same way as the leading edge. Just wait. Any joints you have are on the bottom of the wing. And then you slit through the hinge pockets anyway, so it doesn't even matter. Wrap it right around. You got it.
Because it's you, do I forgive you?
We got to get rid of the women. Get rid of the women. Karen's home. Holy mackerel. How do you like our high efficiency heater here, Karen?
You know, Mike, I wouldn't have even cared, but I was in high heels, and I had a driveway full of...
It's even worse when I'm in high heels, Mike.
Coming up the driveway, and I think, who is that son of a gun?
Everything's wet. Everything's drying up equally. Oh, man, I'm telling you. All right, we're right through this, huh? I'm impressed. Even Karen's impressed. All right.
I'm still in good shape with her, I can tell.
Yeah, she'll let you live for another week.
I don't get
Mike blocked her in on a driveway and she had to stumble in the pouring rain and ice. She was sliding around like a hockey player out on a driveway. She didn't think it was funny either. Says, that's congestion out there. I'll give him a flat tire. Oh, man. You know, you're a big man with women, boy.
I tell you,
Can see that.
I thought she was going to call up and have me towed away.
Yeah. And don't worry, she had the phone in her hand, too. Get rid of this guy.
Who is this guy?
All right, now we want to trim the same thing in the front here. Try to leave 1/4 inch.
You got it. Now that
Boy, this tip is really...
This one came
I can't
out.
believe how good... You're really getting good at this stuff.
Excellent.
Got one little wrinkle here. Pull that wrinkle out. Drajewski-eyes it.
You think it's easy cutting this? Were you jiggling?
All right, jiggle. Cut it, wrap it around, and it's a wrap. It actually took almost 20. I'm glad I'm not paying you by the hour anyway. Pay you by the wing panel. Boy, this is some... Whoop! Boy, that really goes off. Woo! Okay. All right, trim it up and let's get... Now, one of the things you could do, as long as we're done so early, you can get a whole another coat of dope around the edges. Okay, so that you have a coat around all the perimeters, and then as soon as you get home, put a coat on the whole wing, even the tissue. You'll be ready. This stuff's dry already. The other side's already dry. This thing is the way to go. Later tonight, Mike can take the wing home, get some clear on, and next time we see this, we'll be shooting some silver filler on it. But through the magic of video here, in one day, Mike is demonstrating how to assemble your whole plane in under 4 hours. We've tried to do 2 today, actually. We're going to get 2 of them done today. This one, and Rich Jacobones. Hard to believe how much fun this has been, huh, Mike?
Oh, yeah.
And through the magic of laser cutting, everything just goes drip, drop, droop, droop, bop, bop, bop. Mike's making a hatch in the back, adjustable tail. Mike's busy breaking blades and snapping drills off. How many blades you break today? How many
look
you
at that.
got?
Look, I just guessed.
All right.
With no Googles.
No Googles, boy. I'm telling you. Master Carpenter, Mike Kajeski.
I better put the glasses on for this one.
Anyway, we're going to try to finish this today. And this is the jig-built wing. I hope the people that have watched the beginning of this tape, I think Bill Hummel and his crew already have a jig in use, and will probably be writing something about this for Stunt News. Mike has the jig for anybody locally that wants to come and borrow it. The rent-a jig. But you can see, you make it's made. How many of these wings you make already, Mike? 3?
3.
He made 3 wings already. And if we get this assembled this afternoon, hey, we can go flying. Summer's coming. Okay, we ready to flip this? And as soon as he's got the belt crank mount in, the next step is we'll break the fuselage off the table, break the little tack glue joints. This is tack glued to the table right now. And on another tape that we're making, we're doing some real funny stuff with Rich. I wouldn't say funny. Rich reinvented the arrow shaft the other day. The take-apart arrow shaft. For you guys that make the team to Europe, you need a take-apart arrow shaft. Don't want to miss that part of it. Wow. Okay, now you want to take all those little spots. Just score them. See if you can. No, don't bust it.
No.
Score them.
Yeah.
Score them and then pull it up off the table.
I can remember where they are. There's one.
Wood that stays on the table, don't worry about it. I found a good way to do this. One day I forgot the plane was glued down and just walked by it. Karen says, "What the hell was that?" I said, "Well, honey, we're building a new plane this year." Okay, now everybody's been looking at this, so it means it's definitely crooked. And while we have the flap horn pinned in neutral, tail horn, this is a flat tail Cardinal, so the flat tail Cardinal tail just goes right up on top of the fuse side. The old way, the yellow one and the blue one were built, the yellow and blue one. Just check, Mike, just babysit it while the glue is kicking off, and what we do is, if it's up or down, we're just moving this jar just a little bit. What does it look like, Rich? And the more people you can get to look at it. We drop this in. As soon as the tail is dry, we're going to put the X members in the body. In fact, we could strip the wood up while we're waiting. Let's just babysit this 10 minutes, let this dry, and we'll put the X members in. Just keep checking it as you put in the X members. This is really important on a plane that's got a pipe tunnel, because there's no other way you can stiffen up the front of the body. The same way the cross-grain wood on the the mount, between the mounts, stiffens the nose up. This stiffens the back up. And what happened when you get up here, Mike, just put one up here. See about where my finger is? Right. One of those pieces sideways, and then connect those X's.
Those are trusses.
It's called Warren Truss. You ever look at how they build bridges and stuff? The Warren Truss method. Free flight guys will use that technology too. Hard to believe. It was only 2 days ago we were putting this wing in a jig, huh? But this is the world's quickest aeroplane. Only took 2 hours to build. Oh, if only that were true. And one of the tricks in doing this is, if this all dries out, every time you add a piece or do something, what happens is you have a tendency to put a twist in the body. What I like to do is, if you babysit it all during the construction of the plane, and you see one side rising up a little bit, what you can do is when you go away from the shop at night, just put the jar, just offset, so it tilts down maybe a 1/16 of an inch, an 1/8 of an inch. And in a real severe case, spray the body very lightly with some Windex, some ammonia, or even just some water, and then repeat the same thing, and eventually you'll get the body. It's like doing a house jack trick. Don't try to jack the whole house up at once. Get it to lay little by little by little by little, and you'll be way ahead of the game. When we start this tape, we were out on the same deck. It was snowing out, it was raining, and you said, "Gee whiz, is that wing jig worth 50 cents?" Well, look at it now. It's an airplane, and he's proud to admit that I was right all along. It worked great. Oh, it looks nice, Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Ready to roll.
So it'll only be now, the next time we work on this, we'll do the cowl. Put the top block on. You can get the top and the rudder and everything on.
Right.
And we'll be ready for the, yeah, you got one more day and we'll have this finished.
Ready to fly.
One more. Oh, I love the old, boy, still one of the best planes ever made. The traditional, old-fashioned Cardinal of Cardinals. Still a good now. How many, honestly now, we got 3 of these wings.
Right.
And you've had, gee whiz. Who else is, anybody else use the jig yet? Brian's going to use it, right?
I think Brian will, yeah.
All right, so this wing jig turned out to be a real productive thing. When you want to put a plane together in a hurry, you want it to be straight, and give this guy none of the credit. Give it to me and John Brodak.
There you go.
Anyway, it's a good one, and hey, hope you've enjoyed the little ideas we presented on a tape, and hope pretty soon you'll have your Cardinal in silver too. See you on the next tape. Now, as we go into our 12th year of making these type of videos, we've tried to show every possible way that I know of or that I've ever experienced making a wing. I think the only one we don't have on video is the Lincoln log wing. We have the rod, the single rod, the double rod, the lost foam, the block method, I-beam, elliptical I-beam, foam. And I just think it's really been fun this whole 12 years. Always trying to come up with some little bit of a wrinkle in the system, something that'll make it a little bit easier, a little bit more fun to build. And Mike certainly has had fun. He's made 3 of those wings already. Seems like he's still having fun putting those things together. And probably on the next tape or 2, we're going to be finishing that model. And we'll be doing a test flying. We're only about a month away from flying season. And obviously our hope is that you'll share the tapes, share the fun of flying. And boy, it's been a long journey, and I really have to say I've enjoyed every minute of it. In the world of modeling, there's so many different ways to do things, so many things worth trying, so many things that you never can do them all, and so you just really have to pick through the ones that you think you'd enjoy the most. And I hope this wing jig has given some people some ideas. I know there's already a couple of people contemplating building one or building one. I think Hummel's already got one started, but again, if we share all these ideas and we share all the fun, we're ultimately all going to be the winners. And over the years we've made so many Cardinals. There's been over 300 kits sold, and who knows how many sets of plans, maybe another 300. And I think ultimately all of those planes, flat tail, foam tail, built up tail, every variation of the design has proven to be a good basic design, something almost everybody can count on making a decent copy of. And the wing jig will even make that a lot easier. And even if you like I-beam planes, we'll be finishing this one up soon. We try to cover all the aspects of model aviation that might be some help to people that are really hardcore modelers, really interested in doing and sharing and learning. And again, thanks for joining us on this tape. And it's not going to be long before we see Joe Adamusco's Spitfire ready to fly. We'll be getting all the trim flights. I look forward to doing some more flying with Joe. We've got a good supply of these custom canopies. Plenty of options now on these carbon fiber bell cranks. Carbon fiber bell cranks are coming. Back plates are already done. We already have plenty of them. There's so many new things coming out in the next year. Looking forward to working with the GMA Jet series of engines. And again, we'll see you on the next tape. Thanks. Pass the tapes around, share them, and have all the fun you possibly can. It's a good time to be alive. And if you haven't tried Brodak Dope yet, boy, don't miss it. This is the single biggest improvement to model aviation that I've ever experienced, period. End of discussion. And I hope you have the same good luck that we've been having for the last year or so here in the shop.